Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night. It's Jack Nicholson. No, it's not. But anywho, hope everybody's having a good weekend. We're still alive in America, barely. And we got Mark Eddy here with us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Our guest is Jimy Bleu. And it's great to have him here as well. And first off, our guest next week, let's see, Mark will be here for that. Christy Bass and Jared Murphy, and that's Mayan pyramids and that weird word he told me that's some kind of soil. And
Terra Preta.
Yeah.
Engineer very fertile soil.
I swear I think they mentioned that on that Ancient Apocalypse Graham Hancock show, which if you haven't seen that on Netflix, check it out. It's got Keanu representing Keanu Reeves in it. It's really good. It's called Ancient Apocalypse. It's 2 seasons with Graham Hancock. But good to have you here, Jimmy. How are you doing?
Hey, Jeff, man. It's great to be here. I appreciate you having me.
And man, everything's just crazy. We got to focus on the positive and try to get the energy in a positive thing. That's what Mark was talking about earlier, is the shamanic energy. And I do believe Jimi Hendrix embodied that. And I've always loved this music, but I mean, I don't really know much about him. I know there's probably been documentaries, but there's never been like a movie. And I'm someone that I like older music like The Doors. And that's another one, that's got that shamanic. And Jimi Hendrix definitely was tapping into that. That I know, and I've listened to him all my life. And I was blasting it before the show, trying to feel it. But what got you down that road of Jimi Hendrix?
Well, I've been involved with a Hendrix show. I've been doing, this is my 57th year. 1968 I started. But we were speaking earlier about shamanism, UFO, and things like that. All of that encompasses Hendrix. I mean, out of anybody who hit the stage presenting their music to the populace, Jimi Hendrix stood alone presenting shamanistic music, especially in the beginning, before all of the BS started, and that really kind of got to him mentally. But when he came out the box, at least in the USA at the Monterey Pop Festival, if you watch that footage from the Monterey Pop, you're seeing a shaman. The way he holds the guitar, the way he's moving, the sounds he's getting at the end of his performance, lighting the guitar on fire. Listen, nobody's doing that today. Nobody came out the box as a guitar player like that today, and we have some great guitar players today. Technically, but as a showman, as a shaman, nobody has come out like that. That's why I believe he was kind of dangerous towards the end of his life, because he was presenting this to the masses. He was the highest paid rock performer before he died, about a year and a half before he died. More than the Stones, more than the Beatles. He was the man, and that was kind of scary because he was. He's quoted as saying he wanted to bring together gypsy-minded people on an island or somewhere on a country of just gypsy-minded people of all ethnicities, of all backgrounds. That's dangerous thinking. You know what I mean?
So, Jimmy,
Go ahead, Mark.
We'll get into some of the shows you recreate, but what are some of the other aspects of Monterey, the like debut of Jimi in America? What are some of the most important aspects of that concert besides the Jimi lighting the guitar on fire, saying Bob Dylan's grandmother's in the audience? there seemed to be something really iconic about that performance.
Yeah, because it had to count. Jimmy was a star in Europe, in England, before that concert. Matter of fact, John Lennon and Paul McCartney were his best friends until his death, and even before he came to America, they were instrumental in helping him as much as they can, especially John Lennon. And so when he came to America for that concert, it had to count, because as Americans, we're always late to what's going on. And like I said, in Europe, Jimi Hendrix, they knew this was the guy. But in America, he didn't quite hit, even though his records were being released. He didn't quite hit. So that concert was a showcase to America of new experience, and it had to count. And what's ironic is he was never able to reach that intensity in his performances again after that concert. I spoke to his producer, Chaz Chandler, who was responsible for Hendrix sound, really. And even that's what Chaz said. He agreed that Jimmy was never able to reach that intensity. And I'm sure now that I said that, a lot of your audience will watch that Monterey Pop footage, but watch it attentively and see if it don't bear witness to what I said earlier, that nobody's doing that today. Nobody's moving with the guitar like that today. All you guitar players out there, it's a master class of playing rhythm and lead rock guitar simultaneously. When you listen to what he's doing and you see what his fingers are doing. So there's a lot going on there, Mark.
It is. There are a lot of interesting stories where, you know, the Who didn't want to go on before Jimmy, and you know, so there was like a friendly rivalry going on too. You know, Brian Jones is there. It just seems like there were a lot of backstories that came out of that concert. 2 years before Woodstock, and you have a lot of the same people at both renowned events.
Well, you mentioned Brian Jones. Brian Jones was also his best friend from the Stones.
Mm-hmm.
And what's ironic too is that Keith Richards' girlfriend, Linda Keith is her name, and she's responsible and doesn't get the credit that she deserves, but she's responsible for the Jimi Hendrix that we know. She actually, I use the word groom. A lot of people don't like that, but before Jimmy really was a star, he was playing around the village a lot, and that's how they met. And she was grooming him, having him, whatever he played, the Cafe Wow or other places, she would groom him, have him sing out more out front, dressing him and everything, and then bringing important people down, important industry people down to see him. And just about everybody she brought down was like, no, I don't see nothing here. Until she brought Chaz Chandler, the bass player from the Animals, down to see him, who was looking to do management and producing and things like that. And when he saw him, it was all over that, you know, fairy tale story. But people before that were like, nah, I don't see nothing. And these were big, heavy industry people. So Linda Keith is responsible for that. And so there's a lot of backstory, people and things like that connected with Jimmy. And all of that's on the internet. You know, you can Google that. You can Google all of that stuff. It's there to see. What's not Googleable, is that a word?
It is now.
What's not Googleable is what we're talking about in reference to the show. His being a shaman, his UFO connection, which is not really talked about that much, if at all, and his spirituality. especially about a year and a half before he died. He got into two spiritual paths, and this really changed his life, and this is the direction he was going spiritually.
So how okay, how was how was Jimmy evolving with his spirituality? I know, we'll probably get into that a lot more as the show progresses. But what are some you know uh, early interests he had as his career was developing?
Well, his early interest was basically in UFOs and fantasy. When he was with his producer, Chaz Chandler, Chaz, from what Chaz says, he was always borrowing Chaz's sci-fi books. And that came out a lot in especially the first two Jimi Hendrix albums. It's all over. The science fiction UFO connection is all over those albums. And one book in particular that really grabbed him, which came out in 1968, was a book called A Wizard of Earthsea. And that, from Ursula Le Guin, that really, knocked his socks off. And so he incorporated a lot of that book, also Ursula's other book, Left Hand of Darkness, a few other people. He brought that into his writing, and it's all over those first two albums when you listen to his lyrics. And his lyrics stand out just as much as Bob Dylan's, if not more. He was really a poet. When you listen to those lyrics, you can see that this guy he wasn't just jotting down words. He was a poet. His delivery of the poetry, his voice, his I call it a sing talk sort of a style. Again, nobody's doing that today. There are a lot of great guitar players out there, like I said today, but nobody has that combination of the skill of the guitar, the movement while you're playing the guitar, the moving, the sing talk delivery of your vocals. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'm missing something. I haven't seen it. And then when you dissect his lyrics and you say, wow, this is deep. This is okay. Kind of makes you think.
You're not wrong about the music. A lot of music sucks now for sure. It's definitely not there. It's definitely not at a Jimi Hendrix level, that's for sure. A lot of them all sound exactly the same. Like a lot of the new stuff, you're like, oh gosh, let me find the old stuff. But I'm just grateful that you're here because I've always loved Jimi Hendrix. But for some reason, I might have known a little bit about him, but I didn't know that much. So I'm just want to learn. So that's good. And the shaman situation with him, it's just so evident when he's on stage and the way he moves, and you can just see it. You can feel the power of it. And it's like tapping into the heavens. And I'm familiar with that book. I haven't read it, but I know there's an animation, like a movie of that book, and I've seen it on HBO, but I haven't watched it. I've always put it on my list, but never got around to it. I'm gonna have to check that out. But I've heard of the book for sure. And one of my big experiences that really was an eye opener for me was down here in Florida, and I forget which year. It was maybe about 10 years ago or more. The years just turned to blurs. But I was inside my house, and I had some watchword Bible thing on, just playing on my DVD or something, And I study different belief systems, and my dad was kind of like a preacher, so I was raised that way. But now I love Native and even the Norse stuff and things. There's just so many things. All of them are great on some kind of level. But one of the big experiences I had, This was completely sober, no nicotine, no alcohol, no weed, nothing. Something said, go outside and look and turn towards your house. And I was like, okay, I guess I will. And that's happened before with another UFO sighting. It's not, it's like a thought. It's not audio, but it's just like your own thought, but it's not. It's like, and anyway, I went outside and it was completely daylight. And I looked towards my house and there were people made of light leaving my house, like angels, like energy beings made out of the light was like the sun almost, like there was like the sun and them were connected. It's that same fierce light. And it was, and if your first thing to do is like, what am I seeing? Is it a satellite? Or they were so low, it was like their feet could have touched my roof. And it was as if they were in my house, came through the roof and flew into the heavens. And I don't know if they're like, Jeffrey, that crazy guy's listening to the Bible. Let's go see what he's doing, like some Bible thing or something. I don't know what it was. Sometimes I think deceased loved ones, my dad, or something that I think we are these beings of light. That's kind of, and that comes up with a lot of different shamanism things, luminous beings of light. So seeing that, it's us. That's that energy. It's like seeing that quantum energy that's so involved with shamanism and everything. And he definitely tapped into that, no doubt about it. Like he definitely can just see it. Was there a lot of psychedelics? Is that true? That part I've always heard that. Was there a lot of psychedelics?
Oh yeah, well that was the scene back then.
Yeah.
Everybody was doing it. Look what happened to the Beatles.
I've been there.
Same here. I'm surprised I'm still alive, man.
I don't need to do it now. That's for sure. Probably, maybe.
Yeah, but going back to the Beatles, they started psychedelicing out, and it changed their whole thing. They got into spirituality from that. So it was a door that opened up, if you let it, to something higher. Whereas you don't need the psychedelics anymore. That's what was. That's pretty much what was supposed to happen, but it was what I call a gate opener. And you know, when you look at the Beatles, look at what happened with Brian Jones from the Stones. All of these big acts. I used to go a lot to see the group Yes, and it's one of my favorite groups, progressive rock group. The light with the light show behind them. It was incredible. It was like I was watching a Tolkien novel. You know what I mean? It was like it just came alive with their music. So that was the scene back then. And Jimmy was, I mean, at first he overdid it, but you know, once he knew how to work with it, you have those 3 great albums. I always recommend everybody, but I would say so what album should I get from Hendrix? There's 100. I said, get the first 3, you'll be straight. Are You Experienced, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland. Now you can listen to the other ones if you want, but those 3 of when he was are the ones to me that count, because that's when he was in the competition with everybody else there, and he had to really get himself out there. And his real, when you saying the psychedelic, his real psychedelic, his UFO, the whole, everything's in those 3 albums.
And how did the UFO element fit in? What do we know about? I mean, he had an interest in those, or was there an actual encounter, or how does that fit in?
There's a lot of stories about him having an encounter, and you know, I don't know what's true, what's not. But again, that's Googleable. I'm gonna start using that word, but I love it. But basically, as far as the UFO, you got it. Really, the second album, Axis Bold as Love, begins with an alien being interviewed. You know what I mean? And so we can start from right there. And then Mark had mentioned 1983, a song of his from the third album. 1983, A Merman I Should Turn to Be is the name of the song, where he speaks about some sort of an apocalypse that happens. And this is stuff that you have to hear, because as he's talking, the music accentuates what he's saying. So yeah, it's all there, man. The stuff that he did in the studio. Matter of fact, he was the first artist to use the studio as an actual musical instrument. Nobody else was doing that. You know what I mean? And with the help of Eddie Kramer and with the help of Chas Chandler, he was able to get certain sounds and use the actual studio as an instrument. And that's very important because now a lot of musicians are doing that. He was the first artist to have his own studio. There are a lot of artists who was working out of a studio, like Todd Rundgren and other people like that, but to actually have his own studio built, and it's still operating today, Electric Lady. So this guy was a first among a lot of different things here.
What was his like success story that initially got him, to the big time? What happened with that? I mean, how did that transpire when he first started out? And like the success story when it
with
first.
Little Richard.
Yeah, he cut his teeth playing what is called the Chitlin circuit. That's the black R&B soul bands would play this certain circuit of black clubs. So he was backing up a lot of the stars, like Mark said, Little Richard, Jackie Wilson, the Supremes, and he was doing this with his buddy bass player Billy Cox, who was actually got Jimmy those gigs. So basically, he was doing that a lot, and then he was, like I said earlier, he was also playing around the village. He considered New York his home, New York City. So when he moved to New York City, he was playing around mainly in the Greenwich Village a lot, Cafe Wah, Cafe Go-Go, a few other places like that. And he had his own band, Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. And so what happened is, like I said earlier too, Linda Keith, he hooked up with Linda Keith, and she got him to Chas Chandler. Chas Chandler took him directly to England and put a band together with him, and gave him some gigs around England. That's where the Who, that's where the Beatles, Stones, everybody came to see him. So they knew this guy was going to take off. And it wasn't until the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 that he really hit the big time, as far as Americans said, holy crap, what is this? And that's how it all started after that concert.
There really hasn't been like a movie about him, has there? Maybe a documentary, but not like a movie, has there? I've never seen one.
Yes, there's been two. There's one in 2007, Showtime did, and another one, I think it was 2014. These are biopics, but in both of those movies, the lead actor is not a guitar player. So we're going to have a problem there.
Yeah,
we're going to have a problem. The same way we had a problem with Chadwick Boseman doing James Brown, which I have a lot of respect for Chadwick Boseman, but he's not a singer. And if you saw James Brown and knew how important he was, you know that you do a movie on him, it's got to count. What I would have as my template for a great movie about, especially black musician, is what Jamie Foxx did with Ray. That's the template right there. Now, Jamie Foxx is a gifted singer and a gifted musician. So, I mean, he proved himself as a gifted actor in that movie. That is what is needed to be done with Hendrix. Somebody to really showcase what this guy was about. Why are we still talking about him after half a century? What made him a great guitar player is what, we consider him a great guitar. What somebody has to demonstrate that. And it hasn't been done on film.
Needs to be, for sure. Jamie Foxx is a good one. I was just reading that he's going to be doing the new Spawn movie. I don't know if you're familiar with Spawn from comics.
Sure,
yeah, he's going to be playing that, and that's going to be a big one for sure. That's a crazy story for sure.
Yeah,
it gets crazy. But yeah, it's good to know. And the music is just powerful and so different. I've always liked unique sound, like the Doors, Jimi Hendrix, and then other bands like Nirvana, Alice in Chains. That unique, like a Tool. That's another one I enjoy. There's a lot, but I have to have a unique voice. There's so many bands out there that's just like it sounds like the same dude singing. That's definitely annoying. But well, what else would you like to share about him? And then, of course, Mark can ask anything he wants. But what's some unique things that you want to tell us about him that we can learn from?
Yeah, I'm basically Mark knows this. Excuse me. I'm basically better at answering direct questions. I can go on and on about this guy. I give lectures about Hendrix, what I call lecture demonstrations about Hendrix, and I cover it all, the PowerPoint lectures, and I cover it all, and I demonstrate what the guy was doing with the guitar, why it was different, why nobody is doing it today, and what made him great. So, and ironically, in reference to this show, my lectures are called Jimi Hendrix, American Guru, because that's what he was. Before he died, he was a guru. I mean, people were following him, actually. And people of different race, the guy was bringing together people of different races. That is a no-no, especially today. So consider going back to the late 60s. Yikes. You don't do that. You know what I mean? And now we're finding out you don't do that today. You don't mix races like that. So this guy was, we just had Black History Month in February. This guy's left out of every Black History Month. And what I just said warrants him being included. If you speak about Malcolm X and you speak about Martin Luther King, Marcus Garvey, people like that, Jimi Hendrix deserves to be right up there in there because of what he was doing. And that's just my worthless 2-cent opinion.
I agree for sure.
Valid. But Jimmy, we were, you were just talking about the Chitlin Circuit and Jimmy coming out of working with the Supremes. Okay, we haven't gotten into that. You are actually the leader of a Jimi Hendrix tribute band, Kiss the Sky. So, can you tell us a little bit about your band, what you're doing, the recreation of historic concerts, the just regular shows you do, who's in your the different performances that you put on. So we need to get it, plug that you are doing this live and very well too, at different venues around the country and soon to be in Australia.
Well, as I said earlier too, this is my 57th year doing a Hendrix show. I started in 1968. And I was, when I joined his fan club, Warner Brothers fan club, and he had 2 fan clubs. He had one in Britain and he had one in the USA, and I was in the USA one. And that's when I started doing a Hendrix show. And since the band was called Voodoo Child, and since 2016, I hooked up with a producer named Mike Gotch. And he basically, with hooking up with him, what we do is called Kiss the Sky. We recreate all of Hendrix's important concerts: Monterey Pop, the Fillmore Years, the Band of Gypsies, Woodstock, Rainbow Bridge, which we should talk about because of the Native American connection with that, and also his Final Cry of Love tour. We do this all in era costumes, era equipment, we changed. So it's like watching a Broadway play. We have video interludes while I'm changing in between the sets. And like I said, all of his iconic concerts produced on stage by one guy. There isn't 6 different Hendrixes. This is me. And I come out and I do this. And all you musicians out in the audience, you know that when Jimmy played with the Experience, he played a certain way. Then when he played with the Band of Gypsies, which was with 2 black guys, he played guitar a whole nother different way. So you have to be able to accentuate that. You can't play it the same way that you did with the Experience. When he played with Woodstock, he had a 6-piece band. He played guitar a little bit differently, even though he was doing familiar songs that we know. There was a whole different kind of guitar playing. So all of that is brought out in Kiss the Sky. It's a very important show. I'm not saying it negates all of the other Hendrix shows. I'm not saying it negates what the family's doing with their show. What I'm saying is this is very important because people need to see in their face what the guy was doing. No gimmicks, no tricks, you know what I mean? What he was doing in your face. Meaning a guy has to stand up there and show you what Jimi Hendrix was doing and able to duplicate that. Otherwise, he shouldn't be talking about Hendrix. Let me give you an analogy. Bruce Lee. I can't get up on stage and talk about Bruce Lee unless I know the Wing Chun and the Jeet Kune Do, his system, and able to demonstrate that to show you why this guy was great. Otherwise, I'm just an armchair talker. You know what I mean? I could even write books or whatever, unless I'm able to demonstrate that and show you why what made Bruce Lee great, I should shut up. And that's the same way I am about Hendrix.
So, you are, touring. We have gotten together a few times.
Yeah.
People like Narissa turn me into a roadie.
She's a wardrobe girl, yeah.
Yeah. So since the elevator broke, I had to drag a bunch of your stuff down 2 flights of steps.
Which I appreciate, my man.
But one of the things doing while lugging all your costumes down the steps is looking at the detail of the variety of your costumes. Like this isn't just someone who plays Purple Haze really well and you have a nice time at the venue. You have authentic recreated wardrobes. The Eric and Ted are dressed as the characters, or the Noel and Mitch. So all the people on stage are recreating a moment in time.
Yes.
The guitars, other instruments look pretty similar to what was being played at the same time. I don't know about the tones. I'm not a musician, but what you do is very detail oriented. So when that's by design too. But when people see your concerts, you can just kind of just sit in the audience and shut their eyes, and you can almost imagine the Experience or Band of Gypsies is playing that night. How much effort is put into the detail and organization of these shows?
It's detailed. Sometimes stuff goes by me, and my producer, Mike Gotch, will be like, "Wait a minute, Jimmy didn't have that strap on at that concert. Here, put this on." Jimmy didn't have that scarf. So we are detailed to the max. This show is very dangerous. Let me tell you, this show is very dangerous because if you there was a show on Broadway. I don't know if you guys are familiar, Beatlemania.
Yeah,
You remember that?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we do with Hendrix. When you went to see Beatlemania, you were taken through a time capsule of the Beatles from the beginning, before they made it, until the very end. And that's what we do with Hendrix. Nobody's done this with Hendrix, and I believe he deserves that. If anybody, not just to guitar players, but to the planet. The planet needs to know how important this guy was.
Definitely, I agree for sure. What was his astrological sign? Do we know? I mean, sure. Do you know it?
Yeah, he was a Sagittarius.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, old Jim was one too for sure.
Yeah.
He needs a big movie. Like I know they did the Oliver Stone Doors movie, and he needs someone big. Of course, Oliver Stone's still alive. It took me a minute to remember that. But yeah, I was reading a lot with that, not to get into the Doors too heavily, but that a lot of that stuff in that movie, like the college stuff, he didn't even go to college. Like Oliver Stone just added like weird stuff. So you got to be careful for sure, but it's still cool. The movie was still good. I mean, I like it.
I think Val Kilmer did a hell of a job.
Yeah.
With that movie. I couldn't believe it when I saw it.
I swear, I think I read they had to go to like a rehab after or something.
Wow.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. But yeah.
But Jimmy, with what Jeffrey was just talking about with the Jim Morrison biopic. You get like the recreated scene early on of the bus crash, and Jim believed that one of the Native Americans that passed away. I don't know, became infused with his soul, or the Indians scattered on Dawn's highway bleeding lyric. That was a reference to it. Since Jeffrey just mentioned the movie, what are some places that people can visit today that are directly related to Jimmy? Where when he's buried in Seattle, what are some of the other places like this? The scene from Foxy Lady.
Yeah, well, he has a theme park in Washington. I believe it's outside of Seattle, and his burial site is in Seattle. I mean, in Renton, which is close to Seattle, I believe. You could visit that. It's like a pilgrimage for a lot of people. When you go there, you see a lot of people leave little things like lighters and guitar picks on his grave and things like that. He has statues in Europe. He has a statue in Seattle, downtown Seattle, I believe. There are things like that that you could visit. The main thing is to keep in mind the potential of where this guy was going before he died. He was really coming to age of that whole guru thing I was talking about. Keep in mind, the late 60s, early 70s was an important time, not only for what we talked about earlier, psychedelics, but for spirituality. And what happened is, I'm in New York City, and I know that my high school was right in the heart of Times Square in 46th Street. I know that even as a kid, that I was aware that all of the spiritual leaders from all over the planet felt it necessary to set up a place in Manhattan, specifically Manhattan. And a lot of these places are still there. But certainly the late 60s, 70s, all of these spiritual leaders, so you had these different paths, Buddhism, Hinduism, Taoism. I mean, I can go on and on, Sufism. All of these centers had to be placed in Manhattan for a certain reason. That's deep. You know what I mean? That's very deep. And Jimmy, of course, that a lot of that had to do with affecting him. He attracted a lot of the jazz musicians who were into spiritual vibes too. Specifically, Rahsaan Roland Kirk. You may not know who he is. He's a sax player who played 3 saxes at one time, the blind sax player. Brilliant. When you heard him talk about music, it was brilliant. Also, a musician named Sun Ra. You should Google him and look him up. This guy, every musician that he spoke to about music and the mathematics of music and the spirituality of music changed these musicians' lives overnight. Listen to what I'm saying. That means when you go in a room and talk to this guy, you come out of that room and you change your whole spectrum and whole way of playing. He did it with John Coltrane. He did it with a lot of different other musicians on that level. And he did it with Jimmy. So Jimmy met with him twice. As far as the spiritual path, Jimi Hendrix's spiritual path, before he died, he was involved in 2 direct paths. This is before, I'd say about a year and a half before he died. The first path was thanks to John Lennon. John Lennon got him tight with Timothy Leary. I'm sure you've heard of Timothy Leary. And Timothy Leary really got Jimmy into the use of psychedelics as I said earlier, a gate opener. Jimmy did an album with Timothy Leary. He actually produced that album, but he's not given the credit. He's playing bass on that album. Stephen Stills is also on that album, a few other people. But he hung around Timothy Leary. He did a benefit concert at the Village, I think Village Vanguard or Village Gate, for Timothy Leary as well before he died. And Timothy Leary had a partner named Ralph Mezga, who was involved with what is called the Gurdjieff movement. This is the 4th way teachings based on a philosopher named George Gurdjieff. And he turned Jimmy onto these teachings. Jimmy was involved with the Gurdjieff Foundation, at least when he died, about a year before he died. And this was thanks to John Lennon. John Lennon hooked him up with the whole thing. Also, the other teaching, the other path he was involved in was thanks to Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who hooked him up with what is called the ancient Nile Valley teachings. These are the teachings from ancient Egypt by the indigenous Africans. That's why I say Nile Valley, because it encompasses much more than Egypt. And he was involved with that, so much so that he turned 2 of his musicians from his band onto these teachings. It affected them so much that they changed their first names to ancient Egyptian names. And these are the twins that we often see in the Hendrix documentaries. Albert and Arthur Allen are their quote unquote government names. And basically they changed their names to Taharqa Aleem and Tundara Aleem. And Aleem is basically an Islam name, but Taharqa and Tundara are ancient Egyptian names. So, and when you speak, one of the twins died, Tundara died, but the other one, Taharka, is still alive with good friends. When you speak to Taharka, he'll tell you, Jimmy turned us on to it, man. He, turned us on to the whole thing. That's very important because, like I said, around that time in Manhattan, specifically, you had all of these spiritual paths. You had all of these rock stars involved with spiritual teachings, from the Grateful Dead, from Yes. I can go on and on. Soft Machine. I can go on and on with all of these. We know about the Beatles. We know about Brian Jones and the Stones. But I'm talking about all of these different bands. They had
Santana.
people involved. Excuse me?
Santana.
Oh, yeah, most definitely Santana. Matter of fact, excuse me, Alice Coltrane, who's the wife of John Coltrane, after John died, she spoke at my high school, Performing Arts. I went to high school of Performing Arts in Manhattan. She spoke there, and what she said is that she was reaching out at one point to a lot of rock musicians to collaborate. And she specifically reached out to Hendrix, thanks to Miles Davis, who gave her the phone number. But she kept getting a runaround by Hendrix's management. So she hooked up with Carlos Santana. They did an album together, Carlos Santana and Alice Coltrane. Alice Coltrane is a harpist, piano player. And she is, she died in the 90s, but she was a guru. She was an actual Hindu guru. She had an ashram in Manhattan. I mean, not in Manhattan, in California, which lasted well into the 2000s, even way after she died. She was considered a guru, a Hindu guru. But she hooked up with Carlos Santana. They did an album together. Her speaking to Carlos affected Carlos so much, the guy changed his name to a Hindu name, to David Dip. Instead of Carlos Santana for a while, he changed his name after hanging out and speaking with Alice Coltrane. So that whole spiritual movement was happening even long after Jimmy died. And that's what I was saying earlier, was that when you do the psychedelics, when you do the drugs, it's supposed to lead you to something higher. You know what I mean? Or I believe you're in trouble. Deep, right? Deep.
Yeah, and what about 3 months ago, I was just looking for Jeffrey's latest show on YouTube, or Michelle or Joe, whatever their show I missed, and the selections on YouTube popped up, and around Christmas time, I noticed that there was the little drummer boy in Silent Night that Jimmy did. I wasn't aware of that. I was like, I have not heard those, so I enjoyed that. I did not know he did Christmas song, recorded a couple Christmas songs.
Yeah, but you have to really be careful and discerning, because a lot of what he did, songs like that, were goofs. They get high there in the studio, and then he's going down, 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 and then the drummer would jump. So they're warming up. They were, So I call them goofs, and basically, yeah. So I mean, you have to really be discerning with what you're hearing with this guy. You know what I mean?
Well, I was still impressed. His Jimmy's goofs are still better than anything I could ever pull off. Anyway, so.
Well, too. Also, I mentioned Sun Ra earlier.
Yeah.
And Sun Ra used to go around telling everybody that the Great Pyramid in Egypt was a musical instrument, and he actually did a concert there and everything. You could actually do concerts in front of the Great Pyramid. Grateful Dead did it. A lot of bands have done it, but he used to say that it was a musical instrument. Now, the past couple of weeks, there's been new findings on the pyramid that's supposed to just blow everything out the water with what they found in under the second pyramid, the quote unquote Khafra pyramid, and it's supposed to just blow everything out the water with that. What they're now doing is in the process of verifying this, but so far, the SARS radar just found some things that are astounding. And we know even before that was found, we know that certain parts of the Great Pyramid are tuned to an F sharp chord. Matter of fact, Jeff, man, one guy you should think about trying to get a hold of is Christopher Dunn. And his research on specifically the Great Pyramid is mind-blowing. And it's practical because the guy's an aerospace engineer, manufacturer. So he's approaching it not as an Egyptologist or whatever. He's approaching it as a machine. This guy built machines. So he's approaching it. He's not the only one, but he's a very interesting guest to have on. You can Google him all over YouTube.
GizaPower.com. I found this site. Giza, Giza Power.com. Yeah, I'll check it out. I saw all the headlines about that Egypt situation, but I didn't actually watch the videos. But I saw all these headlines about it. That was crazy buzzing. And now this week it's the Ark of the Covenant, so things are really getting weird with the Trump weirdness for sure. Hope they're not hunting down the artifacts like Hitler did. It's crazy. But it's different living in a fascist police state now.
Ooh, I ain't saying nothing, man.
I know it's best. It's best. I understand. I try not to, but sometimes it happens.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Escape from New York. I keep thinking of that movie.
Yeah, right. Who was that? Kurt Russell?
Kurt Russell. Yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah.
There's a sequel to Escape from LA, which the first one's definitely the better one. But
yeah, of course.
You can't go wrong with John Carpenter for sure. But yeah, everything's just very fascinating with Jimi Hendrix. And now I forgot exactly what we were talking about. The last thing you said went blank. But go ahead, Mark.
Okay. There was the F sharp chord associated with the new discoveries at the pyramids, and maybe we could.
What exactly happened at the pyramid? I mean, did you read enough about it to learn what was the discovery, the actual discovery?
Like a city underneath the pyramids?
No, don't. Don't get carried away. That's what happens, man. No, what it is it looks like they found these cylinders that go under, and they end in two giant cubicle cubes, and they look like some sort of charging cylinders that you would put for a charging system.
Interesting.
So basically, they're verifying to make sure. Now all of a sudden, the SARS radar is not accurate. Before it was accurate. You know what I mean? Now, because they found this, is we have to verify it and blah 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 blah. But Christopher Dunn has been saying that this thing definitely wasn't a tune, but it's basically a machine, and to harness the power of the of the planet. And so basically, it looks like his work is being kind of verified in a sense. We're still waiting, of course, but it's kind of exciting. Actually, they found this chamber a couple of years ago, just above the Grand Gallery. That was kind of exciting. But also, too, they ignore Sarah Pachak's research. she did satellite research or on the Giza Plateau, where they found astonishing things like pyramids, temples, cities, all under that sand. And of course, now all of a sudden, that radar isn't accurate. You know what I mean? But everybody's ignoring her research, and yikes! I mean, that woman, what she found is, we know that there's something else going on with that place. We know, we just can't put our fingers on it, and now it looks like we're starting to put our fingers on it.
Well, I know there's always been speculation about some kind of charging or a battery or something like that, like the big cylinder thing. So they actually found it. Wow, that's interesting for sure. I don't know if you've had a chance to see that Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix, but you'd love it, Jimmy, and I'm sure Mark would love it for sure. But
yeah, I wrote it down. I'm gonna look for it.
That's good. It's Graham Hancock and then Keanu Reeves, and basically the whole things are kind of pointing to they travel all over the world, but that there was some kind of ancient super civilization that is kind of being covered up by those in charge, but there's proof that it's, there's something else there that's, big. It's good. It's really good.
Yeah. Chris brings more of like a engineering background to analyzing the structures, and I met him at a conference at the Serpent Mound, and he had showed some of the close-ups of some of the colossal statues, and the faces are still very well preserved, and a lot of the samples in Chris's PowerPoint presentation just focused on the face, and he had a line drawn right down the center of the face, and going from the tip of the nose to the ears. It was perfectly symmetrical. This was done over 3,000 years ago. I mean, yeah, that's really very highly skilled craftsmanship. What kind of technology are they using to make the face so accurate that symmetry, it all lines up. It's not like one side is out of proportion. You can tell that people weren't sitting there just banging on rocks to make like a semblance of a face. This is artwork that probably a lot of people can't even do today. So Chris brings up really fascinating points about the technology from 3,000 3,500 years ago. It's really fascinating what both of you are bringing up about that time period at Giza.
Yeah, what you're talking about is what Chris is showing with those line drawings on the face and stuff, is that if you were to take, let's say that giant Ramsey statue is what you're talking about. If you were to take one side of that face and then flip it over and move it to the other side, it's the exact perfect. Mm-hmm. Nobody's face is perfect like that. There's always little anomalies in somebody's face. So he's showing that you can't do that by hand. It has some other means of doing it. Now, he's not going to speculate what the heck the machine was. He does have theories on it. I've heard him talking about it. But that right there should interest people, and which it doesn't. People just I don't know what they're talking about, especially when you listen to Zahi Was. So basically, they just now he just chumps it right off. But I don't know, there's definitely something going on there. And you said it, you made up a good point, Mark, when you said that people can't do it today. You're right. There's this woman named Carmen Bolter who has brought actually a group of engineers to Egypt, and she has videos of her. I can't even see a video on YouTube. She has done this a few times, but she brought a group of engineers, and you could just their reactions when they go there. They were like, "How do you do this? How do you lift it? We can't do that."
Mm-hmm.
And these are engineers from around the planet, not just from here. Because see, we have egos here. We'll go there and say, but maybe if they get, you know what I mean? But go around the planet and speak to other people, you know what I mean, who are just as knowledgeable about these things as we are. And like I said, the look on their face, the Asian guy, the guy from Europe, the look on their face is like, how did they, what the, we can't do that today. We don't have the technology to do that today. How did they? And it's not just in Egypt. When you go around the planet, you'll see other structures that are just as fathomable, that are just as amazing. You know what I mean? That's why I was telling you, Jeff, you got to go to Coral Castle. Matter of fact, when you first step through that gate, you're going to feel a little hum in your ear, but you have to be attentive. You know what I mean? You can't go there, talking with your buddies or whatever. When you walk in there attentively, it's going to be like a little hum. And that's purposely done. The things were purposely built to give you that effect. You know what I mean? By this one guy who weighs no more than 98 pounds, lifting stuff that's the size of 30 cars pressed together. It's an amazing place. Nobody knows how he did it. Engineers have been there. I've seen videos of engineers there. They're like, I can't tell you. I don't know. He didn't use no lifts, no cranes, none of that stuff. Something's going on, man.
I'll definitely have to check it out. I've definitely heard of it, and I think I saw that Ancient Aliens episode, but I'll have to see how far it is. It sounds interesting. Need some power locations to go to. Feeling drained, so some of those sacred energy sites get a recharge of the old batteries for sure.
Yeah.
I think Chris has a new book out as well. So maybe we can get him to do a show to promote the book. But his Giza power plants book is very interesting, and you've seen him on the Ancient Aliens with the square, and it's like 90-degree angle. He's walking a long distance down some of the hallways.
You're talking about him in the Serapeum.
Yeah. Okay, this is built thousands of years ago. Except for Joe's carpentry skills, you just don't see like such large expanses that are so perfectly aligned. And Jeffrey probably knows from some of the other shows, out of the past. It's like the Newark earthworks are lined or laid out, and they're just made out of dirt, and like they're off like an eighth of an inch over 1,500 feet. It's all perfectly aligned to the summer solstice, sun, sunrise. I think it's sunrise. But you're talking about these really long distance measurements, and you're barely off. Just you're only talking like that, that much. And that was done a couple thousand years ago. The technology that you start bringing up, it just keeps coming up in so many of these shows. It's very interesting.
Yeah, it is. I used to not watch Ancient Aliens. I used to think it was a joke until they started having important people that I respect do commentary on there, and I'm like, whoa. Then I started watching it, and they're not too far off. I think they're using the word aliens, but there's something. See, we have to keep in mind too when we speak about ancient civilizations. 99 and 44/100% of the time, we're not mentioning the initiate master society that was happening in these cultures. I'm speaking specifically of the ancient Nile Valley and ancient India. Now, of course, there's other places on the planet, but those two specifically, you had a society that was under the ruling society that governed the whole way that society moved. And some people will call them aliens. I say these were people of higher mind. Okay. Now, whether we want to say that, I don't know. I'm just saying the proof that they were a higher mind is what they did. That's what they left behind. That's the verification that these people existed. And I'm saying, just hear me out, because when you speak about ancient Egypt, you never hear that mentioned. You always say, well, the Pharaoh wanted this built, and basically he didn't like it over here, so he moved it over there. And you know what I mean? There is no mention, and you mentioned earlier too, Jeff, in the traditions. The publishing company, I give them a lot of credit because they have produced the works of Swala de Lubix. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but you should definitely look him up, because he's the guy who first propagated what I was just speaking about, that there was in ancient civilization, there was an underlying society that guided the whole society. The Pharaoh didn't just wake up one day and say, "Oh, gee, I want a pyramid built over there." You know what I mean? You were mentioning, Mark, the ley lines and the alignments and stuff like that. These are what these people had knowledge of, and what they built these structures on. You know what I mean? The Pharaoh would stamp his name on it, but it wasn't the Pharaoh's wish to just build. Oh, gee, I want a pyramid here. I want a temple there. When you walk inside these temples, they're perfectly aligned with certain, like you were speaking of earlier, certain alignments that are not just coincidence, not just haphazard. The floors in these temples are marble and other alabaster. That's for resonance. You know what I mean? There's something going on that we're not aware of. And instead of us humbling down and saying, well, gee, we're not aware, I don't know why they would do this. We're like, well, it's a coincidence. Well, they couldn't find no other rocks, so they used alabaster. This is what comes out of our mouths. Not all of us, but I mean, a lot of these people, when I watch these shows, I sometimes I try to be objective, but I got to turn it off. But like I said, these ancient civilizations were guided by an underlying society, underlying community that governed the whole society. And the reason why they were able to do what they did was because what this community governed actually worked. Meaning, keep in mind, these tombs were not built for us to go in and see. You know what I mean? We dig them up and things, but they're not built for that. They were built for the person. So what these tombs are saying is that it's like a map. It's like, okay, you go through this gate and blah, 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 blah. And you have to do this and you have to blah, 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 blah. And then you reach this star and blah, 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 blah. Now, we know it worked. How do we know it worked? Because the civilizations lasted for thousands and thousands of years. You don't have a lasting civilization last that long under BS. You know what I mean? It's something you have to have a strong spiritual foundation for a civilization that lasts that long. The ancient Nile Valley civilization lasted that long with minor interruptions, but it always came back to that underlying community, like I said, that had that guided the whole civilization. And that's something. Listen, I'm probably the only guy you hear is talking about this. And that's why inner traditions is important to me, and which is why, Jeff, you should really look up Swallow de Lubix, because he's the first one.
Help me with his name some. I was trying to get it, and I was like, what was his name? His
name is Ara.A, that's for Renee. And the last name is Schwaller, SCHW, ALLER. D, then day, well, for day, Swallow Day, DE, and then Lubix. That's LUBICZ.
All right, I think I found it. Yes, I did it. That's a name, buddy.
Yeah, Inner Tradition is the only one that would publish this guy. Published his wife, Swallow de Lubix was very technical, very math. He detailed the Temple of Luxor and how it relates to the human body. You know what I mean? From the brain on down to the toes. He documents that. But he's very technical and mathematical. So his wife, Isha, ISHA, wrote about the same subjects, but she puts it in a layman's form so that you and I can understand it. Because if we read Swallow, we'd be like, we put the book down. And she puts it in one of the books called Herback. She puts it in a novel form in a story, almost like you reading The Wizard of Earthsea. It's almost like that. She puts it in a novel form so you can grasp the greatness of the ancient Nile Valley. And like I said, in the traditions will always have my heart for publishing these people, because they're very not mainstream.
Yeah, Jeffrey's what? Have you hit send to Ashley yet? I need a copy of that.
No. Oh, what book are you talking about? Oh, Ashley. Yeah, I know what you're talking about now. God, yeah. I've worked with them for so many years. It's been so long. And Bear & Company. It was Bear & Company. I don't know if it changed to I don't know if there's still two different things, but I know they're like the same company too.
They work together. They provide lots of guests to our shows. Me too. What about Manzanita? Oh yeah. Yeah, she's still the manager of it. Give them a plug.
Good people for sure. I have a lot of cool like Native American Oracle like cards and stuff from them, like old cool stuff. It's just so much neat stuff for sure. There's a lot of neat stuff.
You mentioned Native American. There was a concert Jimmy did in Hawaii. They just did the 50th anniversary for that. And it's called the Rainbow Bridge concert. And the full name is the Rainbow Bridge Color Sound Vibratory Experiment. That was the name of the concert. It was like supposed to be a Woodstock sort of thing. But it was in Hawaii. It was in the heart of a volcano. Wow. And the thing is, Jimmy played there, and he basically, in between his sets, he left the stage and went inside a teepee. And he would smoke there and he would meditate with a few other Native Americans. The jacket that when you pull up that concert on Google and you see what he's wearing, this black jacket with silver decorations on it, that was made by a Native American woman who made that for him.
Cool.
Am I allowed to show that on camera?
What is it?
That? Oh, no, it's
Too blurry.
Yeah,
Too
yeah.
blurry. Yeah, I
but
see it.
yeah, that's the black jacket.
Yeah, that's the jacket.
You can find it on
Now,
YouTube
that concert
as
is
well.
considered hokey, whacked out. Matter of fact, a film was done, and it's laughable. The film that was done because these people, everybody's high and everybody's talking stupidness. But the important thing about that concert, the guy Chuck, who put that concert together, the important thing that I always say in my lectures came out of that is not so much Jimmy played and things like that. It's what the vision that Chuck had of bringing together different representatives of different spiritual paths in one place for a specific reason of the vibe of the earth. Bringing that whole thing together. Now, a lot of those people, I spoke to some of the people who went. They didn't go to see Jimmy play, but the point is they were together for, I think it was a conference or something, and that was important. That was very important to do at that time.
Bringing in the cosmic energies for sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Jimmy, with your long association with Billy Cox, who is there, what did you learn from him about these legendary shows? Hopefully after the show, people can go to YouTube and look at the concerts. But what has Billy told you about these concerts, like playing in a extinct volcano or Atlanta? I have that down here somewhere in my stack of props. But what have you learned about some of these shows that are just being released now on CDs, or Woodstock was already well documented even before the recent release of the show?
Well, yeah, I'll start with Billy because he's like my big brother. I learned a lot about Jimmy, and especially before Jimmy died, which is why I always tell people when they mention the later albums, Cry of Love and Rainbow Bridge, and I'm like that. That's a lot of stuff. I knew this even before I spoke to Billy, but that's a lot of stuff that they didn't have time to finish. Jimmy was on the phone with Billy before he died almost every day. He would call Billy and say, "Listen, I want to go and change. I want to change the guitar part. I want to change the vocal part to blah 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 blah. I think I want to rearrange it and go to the bridge." He was changing those songs that we hear on those albums constantly, and Billy would write notes and blah 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 blah. But then Jimmy died, so a lot of that stuff is not finished. The Band of Gypsies concert, which is Buddy Miles, Billy Cox, and Jimi Hendrix at the Fillmore. That to me, I was at 3 of those shows. There were 4 shows. I was at 3 of them. They were what I call glorified jam sessions. As a matter of fact, I was at 2 of the rehearsals at the Bag and Nail studio, and they were better than the concert to me. So I don't even, when people say, "Well, what about the Band of Gypsies?" You pick it up if you want to, but it's a jam system. And the saving grace of that album is his version of Machine Gun. Basically, but other than that, yikes. But I learned so much from speaking to Hendrix people. I used to have an FM radio show that was really popular out of Teaneck, New Jersey, and I had that for about 12 years. I got to interview many of the Hendrix people on my show, and became really close with some of them. People like Juma Sultan, who's a percussionist with Jimmy at Woodstock, Rosalie Brooks, who was Jimmy's girlfriend, did the first recordings with Jimmy. I got to speak to Jimmy Castor, who famous R&B sax player who was friends with Jimmy. Colette, who made the Woodstock jacket for Jimmy. I got to speak to her, became good friends with her. Larry Coryell, the great jazz guitar player, affected Jimmy so much. I got to speak to him. Are you familiar with Terry Reid? You know who Terry Reid is?
No, I don't.
He was English. Did he
Yes.
have something like early? He was supposed to be in Zeppelin.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he was. They wanted him for Zeppelin, and Terry was like, "Listen, I'm not the guy, but you should check out this guy Robert Plant." And he got, but he's had a few hits here and there. I got to speak to him a couple of times on my radio show, and he verifies Jimmy meeting Miles Davis. Actually, Miles Davis shows up at the apartment they were staying at. He happened to be in the apartment. Jimmy was in the shower, and Jimmy said, "I got somebody coming to the door. Open the door if they come while I'm in the shower." And it was Miles Davis. So, I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, Jimmy never played with Miles Davis." Well, that shoots that myth right down. And also, I spoke to Alan Douglas, Jimmy's producer. Spoke to Kathy Etchingham, his girlfriend. Just so many people, man. Even spoke to Johnny Winter, the great guitar player, who jammed a lot with Jimmy, knew Jimmy very well. So, I say that to say that research always rewards the seeker. And my research on Jimmy has definitely deepened speaking to these people, even though I hung around Jimmy a few times. But I was a kid. I was 15 or so, 15 to 16. But basically, speaking to these people have definitely gained some insight into where this guy was going and what he was about.
What was there some kind of drama or something that happened and leading up to his death or something? I remember Mark saying something like that, maybe something similar or not, or something. I mean, there were some things that he was going through that were bad at the end there or something.
Well, he's becoming aware of what was going on with his management, taking all of his money. Keep in mind, he was the highest paid rock performer of his time, about a year and a half before he died. And he was almost broke all the time. You know what I mean? Basically, so he was becoming aware of his contract with his management was up the year he died. So he was looking to get out of it. He was speaking to different people about going in a whole nother direction. And he died. Now, yes, there was strange circumstances, I believe, with his death, but I don't talk about it. Whenever it's brought up at my lectures, I always say, next question. I don't talk about his death at all, because when they come after me, ain't nobody got my back. You know what I mean? So I don't know nothing. I just know the guy died.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He's dead. I go by what he left behind and what I'm carrying on, what he did. I'm the last surviving protege of Hendrix. He had 3 proteges. Velvet Turner. He had a guy named Vishwa. His first name was James. And Vishwa, you can see when you see the Jimmy at Berkeley footage, Jimmy live at Berkeley College. When you see that footage, you see him in a limousine with his 2 girlfriends, and you see a black guy. That's Vishwa, protege Jimmy. And those 2 guys are dead. Velvet and Vishwa are dead. So I'm the last surviving protege of Jimmy. Stuff that he showed me. I'm still carrying on what he's doing. And that's as far as I go. I mean, I don't talk about no death, or I don't even talk about too much what he's going through with his management. That stuff can get you killed today, man.
Yep, he's a shining angel now and still jamming, I'm sure, with the guitar in the afterlife.
Oh yeah.
The quantum realms. It's interesting. We were talking about ancient civilizations and super civilizations. There's a lot of weird. There's a guy named Kawani Laparitis, and he wrote a book called Sasquatch People. And basically, he says that there are Bigfoot that have kind of like ape-like features, but there's also a race of them that are kind of like human but hairy. And he called them the Ancient Ones, which is kind of a weird name. And this guy's been speaking about this kind of thing forever. But I kind of wonder sometimes if some of that kind of stuff kind of ties into that super civilization. There's something to it that's weird with that subject, just researching it. I have a book about Bigfoot. It's just like interviews with different people about the subject. Some are like hunters that go out there looking for it like idiots, and some of them are like serious researchers and stuff. But it's interesting to think about. It definitely ties into that. Super civilization is a big component in that Ancient Apocalypse show. That's really good. There's something to that, and who knows, maybe there's an alien origin story there somewhere.
Yeah,
But
I agree. Yeah.
And have you had any paranormal experiences? Is there anything you speak about at all, or in your journey on Earth?
Yeah, but it becomes fantasy, man. I remember one time, and I'm scared of heights now that I'm older, but I was Central America climbing up a pyramid with an acoustic guitar and tripping. Plus, I had peyote. So climbing up those stairs, and then each of these pyramids had this little boxed room, like little square room you could sit in. It's empty, but you sit in. So I sit in there, play like I'm a hippie, whatever, just playing, blah, blah, blah. And then again, hey, it's time to go. We're getting ready to go. We're getting ready to go. And here I am, just nonchalantly walking down the stairs like nothing. And as I'm walking, I see a light just go around the pyramid around me, and I stop on one of the stairs and I'm looking, and then it shoots up to the sky. But what does it mean? I don't know. I don't know, man. I just know that I was high, and maybe that had a lot to do with it. But I've had instances like that. I had a near-death experience, too much drugs, where they tell you on the other side, no, go back, it's not your time. I mean, I can go on and on, man. But like I said earlier, all this stuff leads you to a practical spiritual path. If it doesn't, you're in trouble. You know what I mean? If it doesn't lead you to something higher, you're in trouble, man. I liken it to, because we can all agree that life is a school, right? I know when I was in school, I was a poor student, especially in high school, especially when I joined the Hendrix fan club. I never went to school. I'm surprised I never got left back. So I don't want to be left back when my time is up here. You know what I mean? I want to move on to the next grade. And that's what I mean when I say practical spiritual path. You better latch on to something that's going to assure that you move on and you don't get left back. A lot of people are into reincarnation. They want to come back. You know what I mean? For me, I don't want to do that. Matter of fact, in the ancient Nile Valley path, there are two roads that are offered to the person. To the general society, the general masses, there's the path of reincarnation, which is called the path of Asar. We know as Osiris. And that's basically the path of, keep on that karmic wheel, basically, until you get it right and you move on. Then there's the path of Heru, which we know as Horus. And that path is a direct, straight up shot to the higher in this life. No coming back. You work your butt off in this life for that. And when I say work, I'm speaking about inner work that you're doing to get yourself to the next path. That was only offered to the temple, what I call the temple elite. It wasn't offered to everybody. It was only offered to those who were involved with that society And I won't even call them secret society. That society that governed ancient Egypt, the initiates and masters who governed that, and they would choose certain initiates with that. So that's where I'm at, man. And listen, I did a lot of drugs in my life. I'm surprised I'm still alive. So I saw a lot of things, man. A lot of gates were opened, especially when I used to trip a lot.
A shaman from Inner Traditions named Itzhak Berry, it starts
Yeah.
with an I, said that the dead can travel in balls of light. I thought that was pretty interesting. I've seen that kind of thing too, and it's definitely something to think about for sure. I don't know if you've ever seen those Ron Howard Cocoon movies with Steve
Sure.
Guttenberg and all that. There's something to that. Man. I think Opie was tripping on that one. I think there's something to that. Because I've seen beings not exactly then look like that, but they definitely were beings of light, and you couldn't really
Wow.
see their facial features or anything, but it was humanoid, but just like a person made of light.
Now, wait a minute. You say you saw that?
Yes, yes. Here in Florida, it was I was listening to some kind of meditation, like the Bible, something on DVD or something, and something said go outside and look in the sky like a thought. And I went outside and turned towards my house, and I saw two people made of light as if they had been inside my house and just flew out. And I was completely sober. And of course, I've tripped before, but that time, nothing, just completely sober, which I'm surprised. But, and I saw them, and I think maybe they were deceased loved ones. I don't really know. Angels, aliens, I've heard it all, but I don't know what it was. But I'll never forget it for sure. When I try to tell people about it, because I think it's kind of I tell the story because I think it's some kind of hope for afterlife. I think there's a connection to it there that I think that's what we are. Well, we might be that right now. That's why it's so weird in these bodies. But once you get out of it, we're like energy beings. I think like that, like Cocoon.
Yeah.
Definitely weird as hell. Heaven, weird as heaven, not hell.
Yeah, Ron was definitely trying to tell us something with those movies, man. A lot of respect for him as a filmmaker.
Yeah, it's a good one for sure.
Jimmy, you were just talking about life is a school, and I just want to bring up or extend Jimmy's legacy with your friend Jerry Velez, and going on to be a founding member of Spiral Jar. There we go. It's too pixelated. But what are some of the influences that Jimmy left on Jerry? When he went on after his first gig was Woodstock.
Mhm.
Yeah, you can't top that, and had a stellar career with the leading band of Latin jazz fusion.
Yeah. Jerry's a very gifted musician, man. Matter of fact, we did a concert, um, Suffolk Theater last August. We brought Jerry, the other percussionist at Woodstock, Juma, and Billy Cox together um, to join Kiss the Sky, and at that concert, and they haven't been together in decades, man. So that was very fulfilling for me. But yeah, Jerry, man, he's an amazing talent, man.
Yeah, and he's in demand for uh, you know with producing, working with some venues, helping with uh, the the sound within the venue. So yeah, it sounds like his experience, with the experience or whatever the band was called at that time, actually helped to take his God-given talents further on into uh, his life, and helped him to have a um, really interesting career.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Okay, and you're also um, doing light shows from the Fillmore at some of your concerts. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we're friends, and we are kind of endorsed by Joshua White, who did the Joshua Light Show at the Fillmore for not just Hendrix, but for a lot of the acts. Like I said, Yes, and other acts that would be at the Fillmore, Grateful Dead, things like that. He he's responsible for that light show at the Fillmore East, and we actually license his light show. And to give that effect, like I said, when you see Kiss the Sky, it's like you're sitting in front of a Broadway play. You're watching the different concerts of Hendrix. In between the costume changes, there's videos that set you up for what's coming next. Uh, Either interviews of people who work with Jimmy, interviews with Jimmy, whatever, and that sets you up for what's coming down the pike next. And we closed the show with the Hendrix's final Cry of Love tour.
What was special about besides it being the final tour? Are there some memorable uh, concerts? Where was Jimmy going at? What were his plans at that point on what would be the final tour?
It's interesting question, Mark, because one that stands out for me is the Atlantic Pop Festival, which was the part of the Cry of Love tour. And there's an actual video on that concert. And when you watch that video, all through the film, I think it is a film actually. All through the film, the guy's talking about race mixing, bringing races together, and the spirituality. All through the film. I don't know if the director of the film did that on purpose or what, but that's a lot of the quotes Jimmy's, and that's basically what the film is made of. Besides the music, of course. But so this gives you an idea where Jimmy was going. There's a story that Billy tells me. They were at one concert, and they used to like to peek out, to see the audience before they played from behind the curtain. And Jimmy and Billy, they were looking out and they were peeking out, and it was bothering Jimmy that there wasn't a lot of other races in the audience. It was really bothering him. So he was really doing what he could to alleviate that problem. And matter of fact, his whole music was changing. When you listen to the latest stuff that was released after he died, the music was changing to be more inclusive of Black, Latino, Asians, and things like that. Sly had no problem with that. I saw Sly quite a few times. When you went to see Sly, it was like Ritual Rainbow Coalition, man. It was like everybody was there. You know what I mean? But Jimmy didn't have that. And it was really starting to bother him before he died.
Well, we got like 5 minutes. That's been an amazing show. A lot to learn, and a trip of a journey for sure. And we appreciate it. And what is your website and stuff?
Actually, you can go if a lot of you people are familiar with Linktree, Linktree / Jimy Bleu, JIMY. This one MBLEU. That has all of my websites on there. My main website for the Hendrix show is KissTheSkyTribute.com. That's KissTheSkyTribute.com. That's for the Hendrix show. My main website is New Divinity, S as in sound, F as in film, C as in creation. So that's newdivinitysfc.com. And that will link you up to every other website and things that I'm involved with.
We appreciate it so much. Keep us in the loop, and love to have you on again sometime. And thanks so much. That was great. Thank you.
Jeffrey, man, once again, I appreciate it, man, because a lot of people are not, don't want this information. So for you to even have me on your show, much respect to you. Keep up the good work, my friend.
Thank you. Everybody, you're listening to United Public Radio, 107.7 FM, New Orleans. And next week, we got some Mayan pyramids, right, Mark?
That is correct. And, look at a lot of ideas surrounding developing human potential. So it will be a very and captivating discussion with Christy and Jared.
Yeah, good one for sure. And what else I got? Let me see what else is coming up. Oh, there's some May dates available if anybody comes to mind. Let's see. I have a couple of May dates available. I'm trying to. What did I do with my? There it is. There's a schedule. Oh, we got Christy Bass and Jared Murphy, and then Petey Newman, April 11th. That's a Native American. That's Intertraditions Mounds. Then the 18th, Johnny Zoltar. It's like this punk rock heavy metal guy. I'm probably gonna have to make sure you don't say F on air. And then April 25th, Peter Samedi. He's a comic book guy that does a comic called King Cryptid, and it's like a crazy Bigfoot superhero that like battles cryptids and stuff. It's pretty crazy, so that's gonna be good. Oh, May 2nd, Miguel Connor. That's Intertraditions. Elvis.
Yeah. Jimi Hendrix tonight. Next month, some Elvis.
That's right. Elvis was a Capricorn. That's right. I'm a Capricorn. It's really weird.
Yeah, me too.
You're a Capricorn?
Yeah.
I don't know if I knew that. Maybe, but I don't remember. But that's crazy. Is it weird? It is weird, isn't it? Why do they think we're all everybody says we're the Capricorn's the devil? That's mean. Very mean. Not nice. Not nice at all. But Saturn, it's awkward. Oh, someone I saw that was a Capricorn, Ted Danson. I watched that new show, Inside Man, or An Inside Man. It's on Netflix. It's really good. It's a funny comedy, but for some reason I felt it. I was like, I bet you he's a Capricorn. I looked it up. Capricorn, Ted Danson. It's a weird sign. We're children of Pan, frolicking through the underbrush. But definitely a strange sign. Do you know the story? We got to go soon, but the story goes, and I actually said this to Nick Redfern once and probably weirded him out, but there's a story about Capricorn. The reason why Pan has a serpentine tail is he was caught wanking by the gods, and they threw him in the Nile River and gave him a serpentine tail as his dark unconscious. I read that somewhere. I thought I never forgot it. But I don't know if it's true, of course. I don't have a time machine, but it is a weird story. But Saturn's weird. Supposedly, like Hitler worshipped Saturn. Saturn's like, I don't know, something like.
Yeah, you hear history like that only on the Church of Mabus.
That's right. Hopefully Saturn's not Satan. That's what they. Oh, I saw a weird thing that was like a chart, and it showed Saturn, Satan, Set, and tried to connect all those. We've had the Temple of Set on. Now that gets weird and strange, but everybody have a good weekend. Stay out of trouble. Good night.